Jennifer, if we could just take this in parts and begin with what we saw take place over this weekend, which was Israel taking out thousands of Hezbollah missile launchers, essentially, because they said their intelligence suggested that Hezbollah was eminently going to strike Israel directly in retaliation for the assassination of a commander of Hezbollah that Israel conducted last month. Does this preemptive strike mean that things are likely not to escalate further for some time, or just the opposite, potentially increase the odds of escalation?
It does seem like there is the opportunity here for some de-escalation. Although Israel did hit a large number of targets in their preemptive strikes, Hezbollah also was able to fire hundreds of Katyusha missiles into northern Israel, which also hit a number of targets. The damage on both sides was relatively minimal, and both sides proclaimed a kind of victory and said that they were stepping back for now. But the bigger point is that there's been no real strategic change on either side. Both sides have left open the opportunity or the possibility of additional retaliatory attacks. And so we're still in this same sort of state that we were before this recent spike, which is a kind of attritional, low-intensity warfare with the constant threat, although low risk, of a wider regional war.
Well, of course, Jennifer, it wasn't just Hezbollah that we were awaiting retaliation from. It was Iran as well. How do you think this changes the calculus in Tehran about what they're likely to do?
Well, I think it buys a little bit more time. Even before the recent attacks by Hezbollah, Iran had made it clear that they were going to take their time and respond in a calculated way. They haven't taken that off the table. They've reiterated that that is their intention. But it's unclear what that retaliation might look like or when it will come, whether it would be something on the order of what we saw in April when they launched a large number of drones and missiles at Israel, or whether it might be something more non-kinetic, like a cyber attack. That's still on the table, and so we just wait and see. But probably there will be a delay now before we see that response from Iran.
Well, Jennifer, as we think back to April, Israel was able to see it coming. Iran sent its slowest drones first, and clearly Israeli intelligence saw what Hezbollah was attempting to do coming, which is why they say they launched this preemptive strike. What does that suggest about Israel's intelligence to, if and when Iran decides to strike, the ability to pick up on it and try to intercept it before they land too hard of a blow?
Well, Israeli intelligence, especially vis-a-vis Iran, is excellent. They have penetrated most of the Iranian security services, so they have a very strong intelligence network. However, it's important to note that in April, Iran also didn't try to hide what they were doing. They basically telegraphed to everyone in the region, as well as the United States, what their plan was. And I think that was intentional. It was a little bit of show theater. To retaliate with a show of force, to signal that they were not going to stand by passively while given the Israeli actions in the region, but also didn't want a regional war. And I think that's one thing that we can take away also from this weekend, which is that neither Hezbollah nor Iran wants a regional war. And whether that's because of U.S. efforts or because of their own calculations about the costs and benefits, that comes across very clearly, which is good news, because that works against escalation both now and into the future.
Well, and as we consider the incentives or lack of incentives, rather, to escalate, I do wonder how much you think action on the part of all of these parties is being held back, knowing that there are active ceasefire negotiations underway between Israel and Hamas and other mediators in the region, including the U.S. as well. Is the fact that everyone is still, at least metaphorically, at the table actually acting as a restraint on behavior?
I think probably a little bit. I think that's part of the reason why we've seen a delay both in the response by Hezbollah and by Iran, waiting to see how the ceasefire negotiations play out. But, I'm not sure how much hope there is really for a deal. At this point, the Biden administration is certainly projecting optimism, but you see a lot less optimism coming out from parties within the region, both on the Israeli side and what we know from the Hamas leadership. They seem to have very divergent aims and goals, and it's not clear that they're reconcilable.
Well, and it feels like that's how it's been for months now. Jennifer, despite these kind of head fakes on potential progress being made toward a ceasefire deal, it does feel like the fundamental disagreements, the sticking points, haven't changed at all. And if they haven't to this point, what is the realistic likelihood that they will ever?
I mean, I think at this point it's pretty low. Hamas doesn't really have an incentive to make any sort of concession at this point. Israel has already destroyed significant portions, most of the infrastructure inside of Gaza, and casualties are already very high. So Hamas doesn't have much more to lose. And on the Israeli side, it's just not clear that the Biden administration is willing to exert any sort of pressure or leverage on Netanyahu's government to make the types of concessions that Hamas is asking for. And that's unfortunate because really the key to removing this low-level escalation risk that we see that we continue to have in the Middle East for a regional war is to end the violence in Gaza. Hezbollah has committed that it will stop its strikes. The Houthis have said they will stop their strikes. So that really does seem to be the key.
Finally, Jennifer, I do want to point out that Donald Trump spent a good deal of time today marking the third anniversary of the U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan, specifically the bombing at the airport that killed 13 U.S. service members. I have had many Republicans say to me that they view a lot of the conflict that has broken out in the world in the years since is due to that rather chaotic withdrawal from the country. And I wonder if you two assign some blame for what we're seeing now on what happened 3 years ago. To what extent is that a fair characterization?
I really don't think it's fair at all, to be honest. There's just really no evidence that links the withdrawal from Afghanistan to any of the conflicts that we've seen broken out since then, either in Ukraine or in the Middle East. Certainly, the way the withdrawal was carried out left much to be desired in terms of its organization and communication with allies and partners. But it hasn't really damaged U.S. relationships with any of its European or Asian allies or partners. It didn't really have any ramifications in the Middle East. And in terms of the kind of broader terror threat that people have warned about, that too hasn't really affected U.S. national security. In fact, the intelligence apparatus has shown its proficiency in detecting these attacks ahead of time. So I think it's a little bit of a red herring. It's convenient. A thing to blame, and the time proximity helps to make the case, or at least make it look appealing as an explanation. But really, there's just no evidence that links the withdrawal from Afghanistan to any of the security challenges that we see in the world today.